Hello, my name is Aviva, and today I have some fall-vibed book recommendations to share with you. So I didn't actually think I'd come up with such a large list of books that I could share with you that give off those fall vibes, but then I was looking at my library and I ended up collecting 10 books. I have a couple of fantasies, I have a romance or two, and then I have mysteries. So basically a little bit all around the board of books that I think would just be great books to read in the fall time because, for one reason or another, they just give off that vibe. So first up, I wanted to share probably my favorite book from the stack. Actually, nope, that's not true. There are a lot of really good books in this stack. But one book that I happen to have personally read last October when I was looking for a little bit of a murder mystery to get me into the Halloween mode sort of thing was the Truly Devious series by Maureen Johnson. So this is a collection of 3 books that follow the same storyline, and it's basically a YA murder mystery. You're following this girl. She goes to this private school in Vermont, and she basically got accepted there because she's really into mysteries, and the school happens to have an unsolved mystery. The owner of the school that built the school 100 years ago, his daughter died and was never found, so she's kind of invited to the school to come and find out what happened all that long ago and what happened to this dead girl and stuff like that. So it's a really good story. It's got that whole murder mystery thing going on, but then you're also in this private school in Vermont, and it's snowing and the leaves are falling and school is just starting. So for all of those reasons, it just really gives off that atmospheric vibe that you're looking for when you're trying to get into a moody fall read. And also the story in itself is just absolutely amazing. So I really couldn't recommend it more. I read all 3 books, I'm not joking, in less than 3 days last year. Nobody talked to me for 3 days. I just wanted to keep flipping the page. So highly recommend this if you're looking for a YA murder mystery. Next up, I have This Savage Song by V.E. Schwab. So this is a YA dystopian where the world is kind of filled with monsters and humans living together, and the monsters are kind of created by humans basically doing something bad. If a human murders someone or something, then a monster is created, and then these monsters feed off humans, very vampire-ish sort of wise. And in the world there's a lot of politics going on, and the world's kind of divided, and there's these 2 people that run each side of the world. One side is monsters and humans living together, and this guy is trying to kill all the monsters, and then on the other side this guy is protecting all the humans from monsters because these people pay him a lot of money. And basically both sides, the people who are running it, kind of have children, and these 2 children are going to meet up, and one of the children is a monster and one is a human. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this book. I very much enjoyed book 1, even though I didn't love book 2. I happen to have thought that book 2 was a little bit pointless. It kind of ended off with leaving me still with a lot of questions, and I really didn't like it, but at the same time I really liked book 1, so I felt like it was still worth recommending it, even though I'm giving you a little bit of a warning that book 2 I didn't like, but book 1 was still worth the read, so take with that what you will. Next up, I have A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. So this is a collection of 4 books where you're basically following the descendants of Sherlock Holmes and Watson. Sherlock has a great-great-great-grandchild who is a girl, and then Watson has a great-great-grandchild who is a boy, and they basically both end up going to school with each other at this private school, and they never really knew each other before they went to school, but then they meet, and they basically end up getting set up for this murder that happens to be identical to one that happened in the Sherlock Holmes stories, but they obviously didn't do it. So they start to work together to try and find out who is setting them up for this murder, and the story kind of goes from there. So it's really fun to see the descendants of Sherlock Holmes and Watson kind of becoming friends and a murder mystery solver duo sort of thing again. So I thought it was really cute. It is a collection of 4 books where you're following kind of the same storyline throughout, and while I didn't like all books equally, I did read all 4 of them, and overall I very much enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite series in the world, but also I'm not super into mysteries to begin with, so maybe that was it. But I will say that I liked book 1 the best. So if you wanted to see what the series is about, it sounds very interesting to you, then I definitely recommend starting with book 1 and seeing how it goes, because I very much enjoy this series. Book 1 was my favorite, so I couldn't help but put it into this video because I think that it totally gives off those October fall murder mystery vibes. The kids are in school, and it is fallish time, and It's a murder mystery, so what more can I say? So next up, I have a book that I'm not sure I should really recommend because I personally didn't like it, but everybody has their own taste and people like different things. And while I didn't enjoy this series so much, I think that a lot of people will enjoy it. And I know that a lot of people absolutely love it. So I wanted to just, talk about it for a minute in case it's something that might interest you. Basically, that series is the Diviner series by Liba Bray. So I read this last October as well. It is a paranormal sort of series. It's a collection of 4 books and you are following multiple characters in the 1920s New York City. So it has that really oldie vibe, and then you have all the paranormal ghost things going on. So definitely hits that October mark. And then basically you're following a bunch of teenagers living in New York City. There's a flapper girl who's trying to be famous, and then there's some people from the Bronx, and then there's it's a whole group of friends. I don't really remember, but basically they're all kind of working at this paranormal museum, and basically a lot of ghosty stuff happens. So I will say that the story was actually extremely interesting, and I totally see why people would very much enjoy it. But why I personally didn't enjoy it was because we were following a lot of characters, and I usually don't love seeing multiple perspectives in books. It really is a book to book sort of thing for me. So that was one thing that I didn't really like. And then also because it was set in the 1920s, it had a very 1920s style of writing that didn't really click with me. But I do know that so many people love this book, and because it's a paranormal, mystery, murderish sort of thing going on, I really couldn't help but put it into this video, only to say that if it sounds something up your alley, I recommend trying it out, because if you're gonna like it, then you're gonna know that you're enjoying it by the first book. I really didn't click with it right from the beginning, and it kind of just didn't get better for me. But if it clicks with you right away, then you will enjoy the series. So take with that what you will. I wanted to add it into this video because I don't have that many mystery-ish October fall vibed books to share with you, so I couldn't help but add it in. But read it at your own risk. Next up, I have A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. So, this is a witches book with magic and urban fantasy. There's witches, demons, and vampires all living in our real world, but we don't really know they exist. They kind of just live among us. And the story kind of starts out where this witch who doesn't really like her power, she kind of pretends that she's human. She's a professor at Oxford, basically opens up this magical book in the Bodleian Library. And the story kind of goes off from there, where it's all of these magical people in the world kind of felt her open this book, and now they're all kind of after this book. And then, I don't want to say much more, but basically it's a very interesting story that is an urban fantasy that has witches and magic and demons and vampires, and there is going to be a really good romance between a vampire and a witch, and it's kind of a forbidden romance because witches and vampires aren't really allowed to be together. There's no interspecies mingling sort of thing allowed in this world. So it's really good. There's a lot of elements to it. There's politics, there's magic, again, witches, vampires. What more can you ask for a really good fall sort of read? So I 100% recommend this. I recommend this all year round, but because it's witches, I couldn't help but add it into my fall vibed book recommendation thing. So whatever. Anyway, I recommend reading this book. It was absolutely amazing. It is a 3-book series, following one story throughout all 3 books, and it is an adult fantasy. So, it's a little bit more R-ish rated, a little bit more adulty, but if you're into that, then I recommend reading it. Next up, I have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. So funny, second book by V.E. Schwab that I'm recommending. She writes a lot of good books that happen to have a lot of good atmospheric sort of things. So I'm not surprised that this is the second book I'm recommending by her, but basically this is a very popular book. I'd be surprised if you haven't seen it before. You're basically following this girl who a couple 100 years ago made a deal with the devil that she could live forever. The only drawback from it is that she's basically going to be forgotten anytime someone turns away from her. So if she walks into a room and introduces herself and then leaves to go to the bathroom, when she comes back, nobody's gonna remember who she is. So she is really beautiful. She's very young, and she's basically been living for 300 years, but basically anonymously, an invisible life sort of thing. So it's a very interesting story. You get to see a lot of her history, living all that long ago and how she made the deal with the devil. And then you get to see her in present day as she finally meets somebody who actually remembers her once she leaves a room. And she's freaking out about this because nobody ever remembers her, and basically the story is going to go from there. So there's a lot of twists and turns in this book that I personally didn't see coming. I very much like this book. I know there's a lot of like mixed reviews about it. Like people either love it or hate it. I'm kind of on the side of I really loved it, and I think it gives off a lot of good fall vibes because first of all, the main girl, she's very into like reading, and like a lot of it takes place in like this bookstore, and it kind of it feels fallish. What can I say? Like I think it's got a really good atmospheric tone to it, and like overall it's a great book, so I wanted to recommend it. So next up, I have The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So if you've heard of Erin Morgenstern before, then you know that her writing is so freaking poetic that it's kind of hard to explain what it is until you actually like read it and then understand for yourself. So she has an extremely unique way of writing, and you're either going to click with it and enjoy it or you're not. So go into it a little bit with like open expectations because her writing is so atmospheric and like textured and just a really interesting, unique read that I very much enjoyed like personally, but I know that it's not going to click with everyone. But besides for like, the writing, this story is actually really interesting. It's kind of about this like magical library. It's like an urban fantasy, and like this library kind of, lives in our world behind these like private doors that like only open for certain people. And it's very interesting. It's really kind of a hard book to explain. Even if you read the synopsis, and even after reading the book myself, I still have a hard time explaining what this book is actually about. But there's this whole thing with like a bee, a key, and a door, and it's like, it's a very interesting, like secret society-esque sort of book. And, there's like multiple layers going on in it. And, it's got that library atmosphere thing going on. And it's also like semi a mystery because the whole time you're like, what the hell is happening? And overall, it's a great book. I feel like, if I've somewhat piqued your interest, then just pick it up and like try it for yourself because like, it's really hard to explain what it's actually about, but it definitely gives off good like atmospheric fall vibes. The writing style is very poetic, and if you're basically like a fan of reading and libraries and just like a book lover in general, then I really think you're gonna like this book. Next up, I have Nevermoor, which is the Trials of Morgan Crow series by Jessica Townsend. So this is actually a middle grade series. I don't usually read middle grade, but this book like piqued my interest, and I'm like, let's give it a shot, and then I absolutely loved it. So at the moment, it's 3 books, but it's going to be a 9-book series. You're basically following this girl who is at the moment 11 years old, and she's basically like a cursed child, and she's supposed to die on the night of her 11th birthday. But right before that happens, somebody comes and like scoops her up and is like, come with me if you don't want to die. I'm gonna take you to a place that has magic and like stuff like that. And she basically ends up going with him, and she goes to this like magical place that she never really knew existed, and you get to follow her as she basically is going to compete in all of these trials to get into this magical school. So in the first book, you get to watch her as she goes from like trial to see basically, like who the winners are going to be. They're going to get accepted into the school. And obviously at the end of book 1, she gets accepted because, the book is all about her. And then in book 2 and 3, you get to follow her throughout her like first year of school and then her second year of school. So then I know that like now it's only 3 books, but it's going to be like the 4th, 5th, and 6th book is going to be like following her like every year in school, and it's going to turn from like middle grade to YA. So I'm very excited to, see where the story goes and how it kind of like grows up sort of thing as you're following this girl who's growing up. But basically, this story is basically very magical, very whimsical. It has, a bunch of like trials, which is a lot of fun, like magical trials and competition sort of thing. And there's also a lot of like magical school things going on. So I think that it's really good to read like this time of year. It's got all the vibes you're looking for. And if you're into middle grade or willing to give it a shot, then I definitely recommend trying it out. Next up, I have the Ravenhood series by Kate Stewart. So this is a collection of 3 books, and it is an adult romantic suspense series. So why I think, first of all, that this is going to be a great book to read in the fall time is because it's got that vibe going on. There's a lot of mystery to it. It's like very dark, atmospheric sort of thing, but at the same time, it's like an amazing, amazing series that is going to probably rip out your heart, but like in a way that is totally worth it. It's basically, it's very hard to explain it without giving anything away. You don't really get anything from the synopsis of the book, but the general idea of the book is that this girl basically goes to live with her father. She's never really known him or anything, but he is very wealthy, and he owns this like plant and big business, Fortune 500 company sort of thing. And basically before she could get her inheritance, he's like, you have to come work for me for a year. So she moves to his town, and when she gets there, she basically meets this group of guys that is kind of like the bad boys in the town, and she's going to start to get to know them, going to start to date some of them, that sort of thing. And the story's kind of going to go off from there, and they basically have a lot of secrets that throughout all 3 books, you're kind of going to slowly discover what they're about sort of thing. And I can't say anything more than that because, spoilers and stuff, but basically this series is absolutely amazing, and it is so hard to explain and tell you what it's about so that I can convince you to read it without giving anything away. So all I'm going to say is that if you're into romantic suspense sort of books and you're kind of down for a darker, a little bit more R-rated sort of romance story, then I seriously couldn't recommend this more. I even made an entire reading vlog while I was reading this series myself. So if you want to see a little bit more about it and maybe get a couple of spoilers, just get the vibe of what it's actually about, then I'm going to make sure to have that video linked in the description below. So all I'm going to say is that it's an amazing, amazing series to read, especially this time of year. It's just, I'm telling you, it's going to give you all those fall atmospheric vibes, but also I know it's not going to be for everybody. So go into it a little bit wary. Some people are either going to absolutely love it or it's just not going to be for them, but I loved it and I had to recommend it. And the last book I wanted to share with you is called Serious Moonlight by Jen Bennett. So this is a YA romance, and why I wanted to specifically recommend this one is because Jen Bennett has a way of giving a character this hobby or something that she's really into, and it kind of drives the story. So in this story, the main girl is very into mysteries, and that's why I think it is a really good fall romance read because it's got all of those vibes going on. The story is very driven by the fact that this girl is really into mysteries and stuff like that. So, throughout the book, you're just going to see a lot of that sort of stuff. And, it's taking place in a rainy sort of setting. I think they're in Seattle or something like that, but don't take my word for it. But either way, it's got the vibes going on. But the story is actually about this girl who kind of has a one-night stand with this guy, and then she kind of never talks to him again, kind of really regrets her decision sort of thing. And then one day she gets this job at a hotel, and who do you know works at this hotel too? This guy that she had a one-night stand with and never called back. And this guy really likes her, was kind of always searching for her ever since they slept together sort of thing. And basically he's kind of gonna force himself upon her and want to be her friend sort of thing, and obviously more. So they're slowly gonna grow closer, even though she's a little bit not into it until she is into it sort of thing. I mean, it's not too intense like that. It's just more of she didn't want anything to do with him, and then he's gonna be really nice to her, so they're gonna start a friendship and it's going to turn into a romance sort of thing. So it's a very cute story. I definitely recommend it, and it definitely has those fall vibes going on. So if you're looking for a YA romance, I basically recommend this one. But anyway, that is all of the books I wanted to share with you. I hope that you found some recommendations in this video. I'm curious to know if you read any of them, what you thought of the books that I talked about, or if you have any fallish recommendations for me. I'd love to hear what you're reading now and all that sort of stuff. So leave me a comment down below, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not currently subscribed to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can see the next time I post a video. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, enjoy reading.